Hey everybody, Matt Michaels and Sin City Steve here on the Vegas Bad Boys of Podcasting. DJ Impact is off on a relaxing cruise. I hope he didn't take the cruise Tom Hanks took in that Captain Phillips movie.
Yeah, no kidding, man.
Uh, or the or the
Castaway.
the Castaway one. I was thinking the one where Tom Cruise, I'm the captain now. That
Mm.
hijacking boat movie. Um, Either way, Tom Cruise has had awful shitty luck.
He's
Apparently,
had terrible luck on the water.
And Joe versus the volcano. That's
Yeah.
another one. Man, that guy just got fucked a lot in the high seas. Jesus.
There you go.
All right. Well, welcome to Three Count, everybody. We're going to dive into some topics here. The first one here today is coming to us uh, from fansided.com. Uh, Tuesday, October 10th is shaping up to be a big night in wrestling. AEW and WWE are putting some strong shows together, and in the end, it is the fans that win with a great night of wrestling and sports entertainment. The Wednesday Night Wars are back, except just on a Tuesday. Thanks to MLB playoffs, AEW Dynamite is shifting over to Tuesday night next week and will run up against an old friend in WWE NXT. The October 10th editions of both shows are being stacked with big matches and star power, with both shows putting their promotional philosophies front and center. It's set to be a great night of action and professional wrestling for the fans. Uh, let's see here. Then there's a little, Tuesday night shaping up to be a big event in professional wrestling. Which show are you most excited to watch? We got a poll, 48 votes, final results. AEW Dynamite, 43.8%, NXT, 56.3%. So almost a fair split there of those 48 votes for Daily DDT on Fanside DDT uh, on Twitter. Tony Khan looked at the schedule and decided, let's make this Tuesday night a pay per view quality edition of the show. By the time on the October 4th episode of AEW Dynamite ended, fans were looking for the nearest time machine to fast forward to Tuesday for what is shaping up to be an excellent card. The following matches slated for Dynamite: Adam Copeland versus Luchasaurus, Soraya versus Shida for the AEW Women's Championship, Ray Phoenix versus John Moxley for the AEW International Championship, Powerhouse Hobbs versus Jericho, Jay White versus Hangman Page, Swerve Strickland versus Bryan Danielson in a number one contenders match for the AEW TNT Championship. This is a stacked card with matches that could easily appear on a pay per view. There's bound to be some excellent professional wrestling on the show. WWE NXT is going a different route, reflecting a different philosophy when it comes to attracting viewers. The show has put up big numbers in recent weeks, all thanks to the power that is Becky Lynch. Her run as NXT champion has brought eyes back to the show, pushing it to numbers it hasn't seen in years. With that in mind, WWE is going to swell or going to the same well by sending main roster talents to the show. John Cena, Asuka, and Paul Heyman were all announced for special appearances and matches. Cody Rhodes as well. Fans can expect WWE Fastlane from Monday Night Raw. I guess at this point, Monday Night Raw is the only one. And the current WWE NXT card for October 10th has Asuka versus Roxanne Perez and Carmelo Hayes with John Cena in his corner versus Braun Breaker with Paul Heyman in his corner. Also, a gong was played at the end of a package promo advertising the show. So it looks like, from what I know, The Undertaker is going to be there. WWE NXT has done an excellent job highlighting the young performers on the roster, especially within the women's division. It will be interesting to see what other matches and names are added to this show. Tribalism in professional wrestling fandom is packed with toxicity, but the fans who love the industry see that they are set to get two big shows on Tuesday. Some will pick AEW, others will pick NXT, but the real winner of the night are fans who love wrestling and sports entertainment. The best bet is to enjoy the boom in the business because that benefits everyone, especially the performers who step into the ring, put their bodies on the line. Nights like the upcoming October 10th are what elevate the industry to higher heights. Steve, this is something that I think a lot of fans from the inception of AEW have been pushing for because I think a lot of the AEW fans who there's a percentage who want to see WWE fail as opposed to see AEW succeed, right? And there's the same thing with WWE fans. There's a section of them who want to see AEW absolutely fail. But in the end, like this person writing the article says, the winner here are wrestling and sports entertainment fans. So, what is your take going into this Tuesday?
I've mentioned to anybody that'll listen that at this point I'm grateful for an alternative.
Yeah.
The old adage that pro wrestling is like ice cream, you just like different flavors. Yes, I know that it's contrived, but it's accurate. It's one of those things for me that just being able to watch a different show with a different roster is something that is enticing to me. Now, I definitely don't think that AEW is going to win the ratings on Tuesday, and I will be the first one to admit that. I especially with everything that WWE is doing to load up and pack this show. You had mentioned Asuka being on the show. I don't believe that she's been back in NXT since she left there initially. I could be wrong on that. I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm not correct on that. And then obviously John Cena and Paul Heyman going to be acting as cornermen for the main event of the show. And then, as you mentioned, the Undertaker's gong. Whenever you hear the gong, I mean, anybody who has followed the business for any amount of time knows instantly what that means. I find it funny, genuinely funny, that WWE is absolutely loading the fuck out of NXT this week. Yet some people say that they don't view them as competition. Ultimately, I just want there to be two quality wrestling shows, but I still find it funny that WWE is making all of these moves to make sure that they don't lose in the must-win matchup this Tuesday.
Here's the thing. First off, I don't think that in the end, I don't think that they would lose anyway, just because of one factor, and that is Tuesday night is the night NXT is on. Dynamite is making the move. So
Correct.
They're not going to necessarily retain the same audience because of something you said on Wrestling Talk, and that is, that when people have DVRs that don't record the show or something is scheduled wrong, you lose viewers. Well, if it's not on the night you're regularly accustomed to, you are going to lose viewers. But what is more important here is not that they beat AEW. I do not think that that's a factor at all. I think what they're trying to do here is make a play because the TV contract is coming up for both Raw and NXT. And whatever numbers AEW draws, think about it. If they can outdraw that number, it's not that they're beating AEW, it's that they can go to whatever networks they're shopping it to and say, hey, those guys got a contract for X. We want 3 times that money for these shows. That's what this is about. This is about your play for the future, for your product, and the money for what you're going to get. Those advertising dollars are going to be fucking huge if you can prove that this is something that's bumping them up. So I don't think, I think that the war is probably one of the dumbest fucking things that has ever happened in pro wrestling. And it's mainly because now you have people who are in their 40s and 50s who all they want is this fucking wrestling war. And
Yep.
all they've talked to their kids about, who are now 20 and 25, is this wrestling war and how fucking great it was. Go back and watch some of that shit. And the fucking shows were bad.
Bad.
It's very simple. And they did more harm to the idea. People always, you complain about Raw being 3 hours. Well, WCW Nitro is the fucking culprit.
Yep.
And even though Raw didn't do it until years later, after WCW was gone, the door was opened. And it wasn't because the wrestling was good, it's because the advertising dollars were big. So that's what this is all about, is money. It's very simple. Now, on the flip side, I think that it isn't that WWE has to beat them. I think Tony Khan desperately wants to fucking beat them in the ratings because Tony likes to brag. WWE doesn't outright brag because they don't have to, right?
Right.
But Tony
Exactly.
fucking loves to brag. If they were to fucking pull a higher number, he would never shut the fuck up. It would be 83 weeks for him in one fucking week. Period.
Yeah. You're not wrong.
That's Taker. Yeah. Jim did say Taker is he in case of emergency break glass move. And it's funny that you say that because of the fact that two things. One, they probably couldn't get the guy who actually has the glass break because Austin's probably filming something, maybe his reality show right now. But what's interesting is that I really don't think this Tuesday is that serious of a night they need to bring Undertaker back. Here's the thing. They've never actually advertised The Undertaker. So, like I've said with AEW bringing an Edge without any advertisement, so only the smart marks really knew he was coming in. WWE doesn't have to do that. They can throw a fucking gong at the end of a fucking promo and make everyone go, oh shit, The Undertaker is going to show up. And guess what? That motherfucker doesn't even have to show up.
Exactly.
So it's very funny that, it's like we speculate in our mind, oh shit, they're trying to do this, they're trying to do that. What I find interesting is Paul Heyman in Braun Breaker's corner.
Yep. Test drive that for the future.
Yeah. Well, think about if Roman actually is going to get offers. Shit, he's off doing movies. Braun could benefit like a motherfucker from that guy.
Absolutely.
So that's interesting. So Steve, out of all the stuff that is advertised for AEW, I mean, what sticks out to you as something that you're looking forward to seeing on that show?
So there are actually a few things. I really do want to see the Swerve versus Danielson match, of course.
Sure.
I do want to see the Jay White and Hangman Adam Page match, just because those guys have had they've put on some bangers in the past. Obviously, that was in a completely different set of circumstances,
Sure.
in a completely different promotion. But I think that this match could, at least if they give them the time, then they could outshine the other matches. I believe that they've wrestled 3 previous times. And then, of course, seeing Adam Copeland make his debut in an AEW ring, of course, I what AEW fan wouldn't want to see that, quite frankly. So yeah, I think that I think it's going to be a solid show.
In the dream matchup against Luchasaurus. Like,
you kind of saw that coming, though. I mean, he's going to debut and he's got to go against somebody affiliated with Christian Cage. So
right. Oh no, exactly. But the funny thing is that for all this hype and whatnot, it's funny that it's a guy like Luchasaurus, who, again, what makes no sense is, instead of having him debut against someone who is a decent wrestler, someone who has a good reputation, someone who's a decent wrestler, someone who you actually could get a little buzz with because I just never wrestled them before, okay? And then have Luchasaurus fucking interfere in the match, or have something happen that you that were absolutely breaking down that action. Because do you see Adam Copeland losing that fucking match?
Of course not.
Of course not. You have to have him win the match. So to me, it's just like, Luchasaurus is supposed to be your fucking monster of that group. So if he takes out Luchasaurus, what, is Nick Wayne a fucking threat to Adam Copeland?
Not at all.
That's what I'm saying makes no sense in that regard. But yeah, fuck Edge. But what's interesting to me is this. It shows us something that reading some of these comments, what was interesting is that there's this focus on how AEW is like, this is a stacked card. This is great. This is wonderful. So the thing is that the counter was that with the WWE, like, it's like they don't have to do this. They're doing this just to kind of beat them, just to do this. But the real difference here is pretty simple. The idea is that this guy who wrote this said, you have your matches on AEW that are pay-per-view style matches. But if you look at some of these matches, there's no necessarily build or whatnot. They're good matches, right? The WWE has 2 matches announced. They don't need matches because their product is about the superstar brand. And so all they have to do is bring in names to bring in eyes. Whereas AEW, again, the problem is that you have the eyes already of the fans who are going to appreciate these matches. But is the common wrestling fan who's flipping through the channels, if you have John Cena, you're going through the channels, you got John Cena on one thing, and you've got Jay White versus Adam Page. The problem is this. Who are those guys? I know that guy. Who are these guys? Will these guys get my attention enough to keep me focused on them for 15 minutes? Or am I going, oh, okay, I'm going to go back over to this guy because it's John fucking Cena. So that's the thing that they're up against. It's, you have established brands, and I think that's the biggest thing with the WWE, is that they're always about making these guys superstars, making these guys commercially successful. I made a joke. I think the The kicker here would have been they should just debut Punk. That would just
I mean,
fucking.
it wouldn't surprise me if they did it.
I mean, if you just want to fucking make Tony Khan just fucking
Oh yeah.
like his head explode, just fucking debut Punk.
Yep.
Just and he doesn't have to do anything. In fact, they don't even have to debut Punk. Play his fucking music right at the end of the show. Nothing else. Just
Yep.
have the first couple chords of Cult of Personality play and watch Tony Khan go apeshit crazy on fucking Twitter about how his product is so much better and this is bullshit and blah, blah, fucking blah. So, I mean, it's funny because I think that it comes down to TK likes to make this petty. I think there's a certain percentage of fan base who love that because they're petty about it too. They want to see
Exactly.
the WWE fail. I think that there's a certain percentage of WWE fans who want to see the AEW fail.
There's
and
a lot.
Yeah, and
A lot.
and like American Bandman said, no dream matches.
Exactly. Look no further than for your complete tribalist troll, American Bam Bam.
All right, so that leads to the second count here. This was on Wrestling Inc. Eric Bischoff explains why TV is a good indicator of momentum. Former WCW executive Eric Bischoff was one of the key figures in the much discussed Monday Night Wars in professional wrestling. Television ratings were a huge aspect of that battle, and Bischoff recently explained on his podcast 83 Weeks what one can learn when breaking down the numbers. Quote, television is a good indicator of momentum, Bischoff said. It's one indicator. It's the most immediate indicator. It's the most analyzed and measured meter that's available to us as wrestling fans or even in business. Bischoff then went on to discuss the downward trend he sees in AEW's momentum based on ticket sales. The WWE Hall of Famer cited the company initially selling out Arthur Ashe Stadium in New York City with around 20,000 tickets sold. Last month, when AEW Grand Slam returned for the third time, they did little over half of those sales. Quote, that's kind of the same drop that we were experiencing at WCW. It's an indicator that you've just lost the audience's energy, Bischoff continued. In our case, they came, they saw for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden, were not satisfying their need, and they were finding something they enjoyed better over in WWE. As someone who's been at the head of a company that fell from the top to the bottom before being shuttered and bought out by the competition, Bischoff seems to have a warning for AEW co-owner Tony Khan. Quote, when those indicators start to drop, it doesn't happen overnight, Bischoff stated. And sometimes, because it happens slowly, you can write it off to competition on television. You can write it off to the season, the time of year, what's going on in the NFL or basketball or whatever. When you're losing 50% of your audience in an arena, that's the audience telling you something. You know, that's a very interesting point. And when I said Tony Khan likes to brag, I got a comment here showing, what do you mean he likes to brag? And a picture of a t-shirt that says 81,000 with the Wembley Stadium thing. So what is interesting is that the numbers have been struggling attendance wise. We know this. The numbers on TV have been fairly constant at about an 800,000 some odd pace. We saw that reflective in this past week with Edge's debut, which typically means that if there were eyes that came over for one reason or the other, they didn't gain any more eyes initially, right? The big thing is these numbers at live shows, and what is interesting on it And I think that there's some kind of formula that I think is being missed, right? Because you're running a lot of the same venues and cities constantly. You know, two,
Saturating
three,
the market.
yeah. When you don't have, certain areas that are, getting the exposure to the product. The other thing they don't do is run house shows. So, um, it's very interesting because, like Bischoff said, the excitement was there with WCW, and it was massive. But as things started to trend down, um, you know, if you look, some of the later WCW especially in '99, it started going down, and I think that's when the fans were kind of getting sick of the product because they were going back to the same well over and over and over. So, how do you look at it, Steve, when you look at ratings as an indication? And even though I know that some of the comments, well, Bischoff's out of touch because he's not talking about the streaming numbers. But the counter to that was no, he's actually getting at the fact that the lower TV numbers are reflective that they're not growing an audience that is wanting to see the product live. And then you have the comeback of, you know, well, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And it's like, but he ran a company that literally went through this. So it's almost like in some defense of AEW is, well, piss off on him because all he wants to do is take down AEW. But it's not. What's the realistic aspects of what AEW is looking at in terms of how do you take something that, as Bischoff said, the audience excitement is not as, I don't want to say the fandom, but the idea that if you come into my town for the third time in the same year and I got to pay now another $180 to take my family again, how does, I mean, how do you essentially survive this kind of cycle?
So I think that we're seeing a lot of the issues and bad behaviors are finally coming home to roost for Tony Khan. I don't think that TV ratings are the end all be all. However, they definitely do project momentum, as Bischoff had mentioned. I mean, it's this is one of those rare occasions where I will agree with Eric Bischoff on this case. Um, the thing is, you know, the number one indicator for how your business is doing is live event attendance numbers.
Yeah.
So actual ticket sales. There for the longest, you know, as an AEW fan, as somebody that that pays attention to a lot of the business aspects of things too, the AEW fan base, Tony Khan, everybody affiliated with AEW, everybody was so quick to point out, oh, yeah, well, we sold 80,000 tickets to Wembley. Okay, cool. So that show came and went. You're still going to talk about 80,000 tickets to Wembley? That's done. What are you going to do in Cincinnati, Ohio, or whatever market they're going to be in? I think that it really is a definite indicator of the overall the trend and the trajectory of AEW. When you see arenas not filling up by a long shot, when you see 20,000 tickets sold to Arthur Ashe initially, and this time around for their third visit there, they barely sell over half.
Right.
there's definitely a cooling off that your product has undergone. Now, is that because of booking? Probably. Is that because of this, that, or the other? Talent leaving, talent not being featured? Yeah, probably. The problem is that it appears that things go unchecked in AEW.
Right.
I don't believe that there's a whole lot of structure behind the scenes in AEW based on things that I've heard from individuals. But the fact is,
I'm sorry. I had to laugh because American Bam Bam again said no dream matches.
and ultimately that is what's drawing him to the product or pushing him away from the product. I personally, I don't mind the dream match format, but I know that there are a lot of people that do mind it, and they have tuned out as a result. So to completely dismiss TV numbers, I think is a mistake. To accept them completely as gospel is also a mistake. However, you should look at those in relation to things such as live event numbers, merchandise sales, all of the actual income indicators for your business, and see where they are year over year. And if you're trending in a direction that you don't like, you need to make changes. Because if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting. And if you change what you do, you change what you get.
And
that's what needs to happen in AEW.
You said something there that stood out from the comments of this thread, and that was that someone tried to defend how good AEW is by saying, well, they're a private company, and so how do you know that these ticket sales are so bad? And
I mean, it's fucking Freedom of Information Act, man. You can get any fucking thing that you want, seemingly. If there's a published number that's been verified by any type of a source, guess what? You can submit a Freedom of Information Act request and get that information if it's not public knowledge.
Right. And the fact of the matter is that ticket sales and TV ratings are public knowledge. It's
right. Absolutely.
It's not bullshit. It's not bullshit. What we don't know is what you just said. What is the generation of the money between year to year to year without just being told we're a successful company, which is something that you don't know unless it's a publicly traded company.
Absolutely.
And what's very interesting is you said it, Wembley, 80,000. Okay. Now we knew that it's the first time that they're doing a show overseas. They're running London. You're going to get all the UK fans who have not seen the product live in a big environment who want to see it. Great. You're going to sell that percentage. But again, 80,000, if you just look at the television number for America, is 10% of the viewing audience. And realistically, you have to then go, okay, so how many American viewers actually went to Wembley? Was it 8,000? You know what I'm saying? Like, is the breakdown that low that even the American fans didn't travel in higher numbers to go to this big event? The question then becomes, does he go to the well again next year? And if he does, what happens? Because if he doesn't repeat that number,
then
he's in big trouble. And that's a great point of what Bischoff said about Arthur Ashe, which what I think fans, or not even fans, but I think that this is something that unfortunately I don't know the people around Tony who, yeah, I know a couple of the names who do the booking of the venues, and initially the plan was really good of how you do it and how you start to get the company out there. But one of the things that I don't think that they are taking in consideration is something the WWE did, and that is they ran SummerSlam in LA for something like 5 or 6 consecutive
Yeah.
years. And the cooling off on that event was huge in LA.
Massive.
And that's WWE, that's LA. And it the hype in LA itself went from, huge the first couple of years to whatever. We've seen it. So and then at the flip side, they do Fastlane in Indiana and run the biggest numbers over their WrestleMania, their Survivor Series, their SummerSlams that have been held in Indiana. And it was fascinating. I mean, it wasn't a huge pay per view per se. So, what's interesting is that they're able to generate an upswing now. So, is there really, going back to the first topic, is there really a ratings war when it's clear that the box office war, they're getting just trampled right now by WWE, especially when house shows are outdrawing your television tapings? That's brutal. And I think that, in terms of the indications, I think that that's something that, some fans don't want to. And let's face it, when WCW was at its peak, the WWE, their house shows were drawing jack fucking shit. But the WCW house shows were packed. And so again, when you start cooling off, Vince almost went out of business. Let's not forget that. So, it's something that's arguable, that maybe, just maybe, at a certain point, check the ego at the door, look at the reality of the situation, and you and I both know that the morale of talent when you are wrestling in front of blacked out seats is definitely not good. So that's something that's very important too, is that if your talent starts losing faith in the company, you got a problem. So that's a whole nother issue, is the political side. But speaking of politics, we are going to really quick get to the third topic here, and that is brought to us again by Wrestling Inc. WWE Hall of Famer Hulk Hogan on his professional wrestling Mount Rushmore. Hogan was a recent guest on Insight with Chris Van Vliet, where he explained why Andre the Giant and Ric Flair deserve to be on his Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling, while naming The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin as the other two on the list. Quote, "Well, that's a tough one, because Andre has to be there," said Hogan. "There's no doubt about it. Andre has to be there, and there's just not enough headspace there, because up there it would have to be Ric Flair. I tell Ric Flair, you're the greatest wrestler that ever lived, and I've had other people tell me other things. But as far as I'm concerned, with him loving this business and being a complete sellout, he gave up everything, family, friends, his own health, everything, to be in this business. That's kind of crazy type dedication, way more than I could give. He did it because he loved this business. And plus, he was a top guy like forever. So it had to be Andre, it had to be Flair. The quick fix would be Andre, Flair, Rock, and Austin in the Mount Rushmore." Van Vliet said that Hogan himself could be in the Mount Rushmore, to which the Hulkster joked that he could be placed behind the aforementioned four legends. Hogan also reserved some praise for two active WWE stars, Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens. I'm just going with older guys because there's some new guys like Seth Rollins who I really admire. Kevin Owens caught my eye really early when a lot of people didn't believe in him. And I saw him down at NXT. I thought, oh my God, that brother's got it figured out, said the legend. Um, what caught my eye was that end part. And because we always argue the Mount Rushmore, and it's always legendary names and et cetera, et cetera. I was impressed that Hogan recognized Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens as two guys that potentially could be Mount Rushmore guys based on when their careers finally get to that point. What do you think about Hogan's reasoning in this Mount Rushmore? And do you think that those four obviously are fairly justifiable?
They absolutely are. And I think that I'm going to throw everyone for a loop that knows me, that knows anything about my professional wrestling fandom. Um, Hogan is actually very, very close to being spot on with my Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling and sports entertainment as we know it.
Sure.
I am considering that to be different than, in-ring match quality per se.
Right.
But for me, I do agree with the Andre mention. I do agree with the Flair mention. I do even agree with the Austin mention. But the fourth name, and this is somebody that we need to, those of us that have spent numerous years in denial about everything that he has meant for the pro wrestling and sports entertainment industry. I can't believe I'm about ready to say this, but the fourth person on my Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling is John Cena. And the reason for that is if you look at what he bridged and what he did,
Yep.
a lot of times, me included, I will be the first person to admit it. I did not appreciate John Cena in his prime because of the whole Super Cena thing made me very sour on him.
Sure.
However, if you look at not just the in-ring work, which, yes, he had the 5 moves of doom, whatever. He could do 5 moves better than anybody in the world. But he also meant a lot to the professional wrestling business. If you look at everything that he did for Make-A-Wish and everything that he has done for all of the fans, it's insane. And yeah, I can't believe that I just said that, but there you have it. John Cena's on my Mount Rushmore.
It's interesting. American Bandman said I agree with Steve on this. Hitman, not The Rock. So what's very interesting is, and we've now said it through pretty much this whole show: wrestling, sports entertainment. Sports entertainment, you have to go with Hogan.
Oh yeah,
Austin, Rock, and Cena. Greatest 4 sports entertainers because they are the ones who changed pop culture. Period. Crossed into movies, crossed into television, crossed into producing stuff, etc. Wrestling, that's where you kind of go, well, you have to then look at Flair, Shawn Michaels,
yep,
Bret Hart, and the countless others that could be in that final spot just based on being a professional wrestler, whether it be Harley Race, going to some of the older guys, or Chris Benoit. I'm sure would be someone could be argued. Eddie Guerrero, those types of people would probably even argue Mysterio to some point, right? There's a lot of names in terms of that. When you start blending all the names together, that's where it becomes impossible, because then it really is about choice, right?
Yep,
It's about
exactly.
who you liked as a wrestler, as a fan, and I think that that becomes very interesting. But it is a very valid point. I think Andre gets lost, and the reason
Agreed.
Andre gets lost is because of the fact that um, he wasn't the greatest pro wrestler.
No.
And he wasn't the greatest sports entertainer, because he was the most unique athlete in the history of the sport or the entertainment business. I think Andre, unfortunately, because he, didn't get to have that opportunity to do more acting.
Yeah.
That it's a shame. I could you I still want to see My Giant done with Andre the Giant, like it was written, like Billy Crystal wrote it, because I think that would have probably been one of the top 5 wrestling movies of all time. So it's just, I think he kind of gets lost because there were so many more identifiable wrestlers, and there were so many
Absolutely.
more identifiable pop culture icons who, were able to have longer longevities and careers. The Rock, again, not the greatest wrestler by any means. Um, Austin's interesting because Austin is actually kind of the bridge between both. Because if you look at early Austin, great wrestler. If you look at
Yep.
the most popular Austin,
He's a
greatest
brawler.
entertainer.
Yeah.
Greatest entertainer. So it's very interesting how that works. You also got guys like we haven't talked about, like Macho Man. Like
Very true.
he great wrestler and a great entertainer. Um, Dusty, great wrestler, great entertainer.
Most definitely.
So there is so much there, and it's just interesting to hear Hogan, especially leaving himself off that mountain, kind of
Never would have thought that.
yeah, kind of respectful that he doesn't, like he said, okay, I'm behind those guys though, and I think that's a classy thing to do when you look at the egos involved. And I think all those guys would do the same thing. That's the one thing that when you talk about all these guys, it seems to be that the only guy who I think would put himself on the mountain is Punk.
No, of course. Yeah. And it would just be him. Like him by himself, just one big, maybe like pictures of him from his different aspects in his career.
CM Punk WWE, CM Punk AEW, CM Punk ROH, just putting himself in CM Punk, ECW.
No, he would put AJ Lee on there with those 3.
You know what? I don't even know he'd put his own wife on the goddamn mountain. He's that kind of special prick. Oh man,
that's awesome.
All right, as we wrap up here, Steve, any final thoughts?
Oh yeah, thank you for hanging out with us tonight, guys. Thank you for liking, sharing, subscribing, doing all the stuff that you guys do. We appreciate each and every one of you. Also, very special shout out to all the brave men and women serving this country, whether you're doing it on lands, foreign or domestic. Thank you for doing what you do so that we can do what we love to do. And last but not least, repsports.com, reppsports.com. Go there for all your pre-workout, weight loss, general energy needs. Again, that's repsports.com. Use promo code Vegas at checkout and save yourself 15%.
Yeah. And next week, DJ Impact should be back here, back from his cruise, nice, rested, and ready to get back into talking some wrestling. So we appreciate everyone for joining in. Again, you can catch us live streaming on Sundays at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And you can catch the podcast, Wrestling Talk, on Mondays, and on Tuesdays, 3 Count. And usually on Fridays, you can catch the DeFalco Files with FSW, Future Stars of Wrestling owner and creator Joe DeFalco, which gives some great insight into the mind of a promoter and owner of a wrestling organization that has produced many of the top stars that you watch right now, including Zoe Stark and Solo Sikoa and LA Knight. You know, all guys that Joe likes to bring up, and Karrion Kross, wherever he is right now in the ethos of the WWE universe. It'd be nice to see him get a little more love, but
No shit.
that is what it is. And then guys like Chris Bay on Impact, Bullet Club member there. So Jay Vidal on Impact. And AEW, guys like Toa and Brian Cage. You know, just to name some of the people who have come out of Las Vegas. So check that out. Everyone, until next week, thank you for tuning in. And as DJ Impact likes to say, happy wrestling, everybody.